Hello my dear friends, you're on the Military Summary channel, and today we will discuss the situation in Ukraine on the 1st of September of 2023. Today we have a lot of very interesting updates, so let's start. And you know that today the Ministry of Defense of Russian Federation published very interesting and detailed reports regarding the situation in Ukraine during the previous week. So they provided us the very interesting numbers from the 25th of August till the 1st of September. And you know that every single month the Minister of Defense Shoigu published the information regarding the situation on the front line and how another month passed since the beginning of Ukrainian greatest counter-offensive operation. And as I understand, the numbers are going to be very, very terrible about the Ukraine attack, and probably tomorrow or the day after tomorrow the Minister of Defense will provide the entire researched and detailed numbers regarding the months, and I believe that we will be shocked when we hear these numbers. When talking about Kherson direction, the Russians reported that during the previous week the Ukrainians lost 230 soldiers. When talking about just today, during the previous 24 hours, 35. We see that there is not that activity in this area is probably the minimal in comparison with the other front lines. During those days, the Ukrainians made a lot of attempts to cross Dnieper River. They were attacking the Russian positions, as we discussed in the previous videos, but yet they haven't managed to establish control over any single foothold on this bridgehead. And probably the attack of Ukrainian forces in direction of Kinburn-Spit was repelled by the Russians as well. And even if that attack wasn't repelled, anyway, the Ukrainians have no chances to continue and to advance further. Now we are moving to the Robotyne area, to Orekhov Bridgehead. Today we got a lot of updates, and in the morning we have already discussed that the Russians, not just in the morning, in the previous videos as well, that the Russians established full fire control over the area, over the supply area that goes along the main road in direction of Robotyne. And when we take a look at these icons, we can create something like a detailed area where we can find the Russian focus. For example, today the Russians published more videos and more details of their bombing and clashing and attacking the Ukrainian forces, their positions, concentration of forces, ammo depots, the Ukrainian infantry positions, the hidden tank positions, armored vehicles. As a result of those strikes, the Ukrainians lose a significant number of forces every single day. They don't have secure road to supply their forces in Robotyne, and if they don't have a secure road to supply their forces in Robotyne and on the Vremivka tactical bridgehead, that means that they don't have possibilities to concentrate their forces before the next attempts to attack. And we know that the main Ukrainian purpose and the main Ukrainian plans currently is to accumulate forces using this road, to get them as close as possible to the combat line, to concentrate them in the fields between Robotyne and Verbova, and after that to continue advancing in direction of Verbova and the most important probably in direction of Acheretovate. The Russians reported that during the previous week of clashes in this area, starting from the 25th of August, the Ukrainians lost around 960 soldiers, so more than 2 battalions were destroyed during just 1 week. And when talking about the previous 24 hours, 115 soldiers. As you can see, and the main reason and the main problem that Ukrainians are facing every single day, that as a result of clashes they forgot to do one thing. Since the beginning of that operation, the Ukrainians should have established and developed their flanks, their positions at flanks on the west of Robotyne, and this is exactly what they haven't managed to complete, and this is the reason why they have such a heavy losses while moving to the south from Orekhov in direction of the settlement. Significant losses, a lot of destroyed armored vehicles, a lot of destroyed light vehicles, infantry positions, just because of the fact that Ukrainians haven't managed to secure the flank. And today I had an idea that probably this is also a part of Russian operation. By this situation we see that the Russians are not allowing the Ukrainians to develop their attack in direction of Kopony, because currently Kopony is the position that the Russians use to attack the Ukrainians using artillery systems. This is the area that the Russians use for drone squads and drone operators. From this direction the Russians attack Ukrainians with the TOS frontline systems, and the Russians didn't allow the Ukrainians to develop their positions, and basically it looks like a trap. The Russians forced the Ukrainians to attack further between Robotyne and Verbova, and they forced them to think that this is the most easiest way and this is the area where the Russians don't have defense, but when military perspective, we see that maybe the Ukrainians do have possibility to attack further, but basically they're getting deeper and deeper into a military cauldron of Robotyne. Probably this is going to happen. Now we're moving further to the Vremivka tactical bridgehead, and today we got a lot of updates from this area. The Ukrainians stopped any activity in this area. They stopped publishing any geolocated videos about their attacks against the Russian concentration of forces, positions, ammo depots, and so on. But we saw and we had a lot of updates from the Russians, how they continue bombing and shelling and attacking the Ukrainian positions in Urozhaine, in Staromayorsk, in Makarovka, in Blagodatna. The Russians use all types of weapons they have for these purposes. But we had these updates yesterday. Nothing changed. The Ukrainians don't have possibility to concentrate their forces and to continue attacks, and the Russians are trying to destroy everything on their way and everything that they can see. But this is not the only problem that Ukrainians face. First of all, if you remember a few videos ago, we compared the Russian offensive operation and the Ukraine offensive operation, and there is the one common thing between these two offensive operations is that in time the possibilities and the combat line reduce. So the area where the Russians and the Ukrainians can be active is getting shorter and shorter every single day. And at some point, either the Russians were forced, and now the Ukrainians need to concentrate, collect forces, and to redeploy them from one position and another. And today we got a very interesting update that as a result of fierce clashes and very difficult situation on Kupyansk front line, the Ukrainians were forced to redeploy 68 Jaeger brigade in the vicinity of Karamzinovka bridgehead. And this is very important because during the day we got a lot of updates that Ukrainians were forced to redeploy significant number of their forces to the Kupyansk and Liman front lines with one purpose: to secure the area and not to allow the Russians to develop their attacks. So the 68th Jaeger Brigade, probably from the strategical reserves from Maroon Group, was redeployed in the vicinity of Karamzinovka. When talking about South Donetsk area, as a result of clashes, the Russians reported that Ukrainians during 1 week lost 1,025 soldiers, and just for previous 24 hours 150 soldiers. So more than 2 battalions were destroyed during just artillery duels, because the Ukrainians finished their battle for Urozhaine around a week ago, and after that there were no clashes, just the regular reconnaissance operations, and most of these losses the Ukrainians got just as a result of artillery fire. Now we are moving to Donetsk area. We haven't received nothing from Donetsk, Avdiivka, Marinka, Krasnogorovka, Novomykhailovka, and so on. Today the Ministry of Defense published the strike of Iskandarka against the Ukrainian headquarters of the Operational Tactical Group Donetsk, and against the headquarters and communication center of 24th Mechanized Brigade. As a result of that strike, we see the level of losses that the Russians managed to deal to the Ukrainians. And now we are going to the Klishchiivka area. Today we also got a lot of very interesting updates from these positions. And the Ukrainians activated their movements, and they started attacking and bombing the Russians in the vicinity of Kurdyumovka, Zaryanovka, Nikolaevka, Drugaya, Kadema. The Ukrainians were bombing the Russians with all types of weapons they have, with artillery, mainly with artillery systems, with HIMARS system, and so on. And the main purpose was to supply and support their forces, their assault forces, who meanwhile were trying to attack and to storm the Russian positions along the railways. If you remember, a few days ago, the Ukrainians managed to establish some foothold, but these forces of course don't have a normal supply road. You need always to bring more fresh forces, more ammo, more armored vehicles. And today the Ukrainians made another attempt while they established some fire control over the main supply over Russian positions, but the Russians tracked everything and they discovered the Ukrainian convoy, and after that the Russians started bombing and shelling the Ukrainians, and as a result of that those artillery strikes, the Ukrainians were defeated and they lost another number of soldiers, of infantry and personnel among these fields. Meanwhile, the Ukrainians were trying to attack in direction of Andreevka, and the main purpose of that attack obviously was to cross the railways and at least to develop their positions at least a little bit, to create a bigger or more comfortable or more powerful foothold. And basically the Ukrainians were trying to do something like this, and the most important is to cross the railways, but yet we haven't received any photo or video geolocations that they managed to do this. Meanwhile, While the Ukrainians were focused on the south, the Russians took a decision to take their time and to take their chance, and they start massive bombing and shelling of Ukrainian positions on the hill 205.7, and as a result of those strikes, significant number of Ukrainian forces were destroyed under the fire of Russian artillery. We will not watch all these geolocated videos because of heaviest losses among the Ukrainian personnel. The Russians reported that as a result of clashes just for 1 week on this bridgehead, the Ukrainians lost 2,385 soldiers. Just for the previous 24 hours, 390 soldiers. So imagine yourself, for 1 week, the Ukrainians lost up to probably 1.55 brigades. My bad, just up to 1 brigade was destroyed during the clashes for this small settlement, for this small bridgehead on the Donetsk frontline. Significant level of losses. Another important update is that Ukrainians took a decision to redeploy in the direction of Artyomovsk, another newly created, but not newly created, but probably renamed. You know that there was a 92nd Mechanized Brigade, and this Mechanized Brigade was operating in the vicinity in the area of Svatova, but after this brigade was heavily damaged, the Ukrainians took a decision to redeploy this brigade in the vicinity of Kharkiv to reinforce, to mobilize forces, and basically to create this brigade from scratch. And currently this 92nd brigade was redeployed closer to Bakhmut, and the main purpose of this brigade is to replace very tired and heavy damaged brigades like 5th Brigade, 3rd Brigade, Loot Assault Brigade, 80th Brigade, and of course 22nd Mechanized. So fresh forces arrived, so we expect more clashes and more fierce attempts of the Ukrainian forces to penetrate the defense belt in the vicinity of Andreevka, and finally to capture Klishchiivka. So we'll see whether they're able to do this or not. One more thing, more and more strategical reserves, the last strategical reserves have been involved in the combat in the Ukrainian offensive operation. How are they going to defend themselves during the Russian counter-offensive operation, and where they're going to planning to take forces? I don't know. I don't have answer to this question. Now we're moving to the Tarskoye salient, to Liman front line. We have just artillery duels in this area. The Ukrainians continue bombing and shelling the Russian armored vehicles, their tanks, their ammo depots. They try to reduce the Ukrainian possibilities and so on, the Russian possibilities and so on. And for example, on this video we see how the Ukrainians destroyed another position of the Russians in this area, and from the other side the Russians continue bombing and storming in the direction of Kremenaya forest, also without significant progress because of its forest. It's always difficult. The Russians reported that as a result of clashes in this area during the previous week, the Ukrainians lost 540 soldiers, just 1 battalion, and during the previous 24 hours 65 soldiers. Now we are moving to the Kupyansk direction, and today we got significant number of updates. When talking about this map, we will not see any changes, no icons, no geolocated videos, but the Ukrainians were forced to use their last reserves, not even strategical reserves, because they have already used their strategical reserves. I'm talking about, I don't know what kind of reserves, because we got updates that Ukrainians were forced to redeploy the forces of 125th Territory Defense Brigade from Lvov in direction of Kupyansk with one purpose: to somehow hold the Russians and not to allow them to penetrate this defense belt. Furthermore, the Ukrainians were forced to move their 106th Defense Brigade that used to be located in the vicinity of Moldova and Transnistria, another brigade that was redeployed with one purpose: to slow down the Russians, at least somehow, in this direction. Yet we haven't received even a single video or photo confirmation that the Russians managed to capture something, but these redeployments, this concentration of Ukrainian forces and mainly defense forces in this area tell us that the Russians do have some plans, and the Ukrainians are really scared of this situation. Furthermore, today we got update that 66th Brigade of Ukrainian forces, 66th Mechanized Brigade, due to the heaviest losses, was removed from the combat line in direction of Slavyansk for regrouping, because during the previous days there was a very fierce clashes, and this brigade as well as 92nd Brigade these two brigades almost lost their combat capabilities, and they were no longer able and are no longer able to continue their offensive offensive operation. 92nd was restored and sent back to Artyomovsk, but what the Ukrainians are going to do with the 66th Mechanized Brigade, probably we're going to see and we're going to know very soon. When talking about Kupyansk, the Russians reported that during the week the Ukrainians lost another battalion, 470 soldiers. I expect one more time in a day or in a two to receive updates from the Ministry of Defense regarding the real number and like the total number of losses during the August, and I believe that they're going to be much more terrible in comparison with July and June. And if we calculate, as I understand, the Ukrainian losses during summer, like June, July and August, I believe that the number of Ukrainian losses will be around 80,000 soldiers. Anyway, we'll see, and I believe that the Ministry of Defense of Russian Federation will provide us these numbers very, very soon. And that's it for today. Military Summary channel reminds to condemn any violence in the world. Thank you for your watching. Subscribe to my channel, put your likes, join my Patreon, and have a good day. Bye bye.